In Rome, where white marble still bore the stains of blood sworn and betrayed, the name Gaius Tullius Varro once stood for honor and virtue, a pontifex minimus. One of the Republic's moral custodians, Gaius preached, when a woman betrays her husband, she does not only mock the hearth, but insults Jupiter himself. People nodded. Noble women stared at him as though he were a breathing statue of divine judgment, and then he became the puppet in a tragedy twined between lust and law. Livia, his wife, was a rare beauty, radiant at every holy festival. Her raven black hair draped like silk, her voice soft as honey over marble. But after 8 cold years of marriage, the fire between them had turned to ash. Gaius was lost in statecraft and sacred rituals, forgetting the color of his wife's eyes. Livia, caged in opulence, turned her gaze elsewhere toward Marcus Varro, a young officer under Gaius' command, whose hands were strong and whose heart beat like Vulcan's forge. Their affair bloomed in sin, grew in secret rooms, and blossomed in fleeting glances exchanged behind temple curtains. It might have remained a secret had a supposedly mute slave not heard the gasping behind the veil. But he was no mute. He was a spy, planted by a political enemy, and he whispered what he saw into the ear of the one man more dangerous than a dagger, Lucius Aurelius Severus, the judge with a velvet hand and a heart of acid-laced limestone. Lucius, once a friend of Gaius, now relished the opportunity to destroy his rival's pride. Within 3 days, Gaius was summoned not as a priest or a senator but as a humiliated husband. Under Roman law, his honor had to be cleansed through blood, exile, or chains. Love was dead. Now came the inquest. The day of the trial dawned beneath a drizzling sky rain, soft and persistent, as if the goddesses themselves wept. In the shadow of the Basilica Julia, footsteps echoed like a funeral march. Gaius Tullius Varro sat in the Hall of Justice, no longer a judge, but a victim, a role as cruel as it was absurd in the very system he upheld. According to Lex Julia de adultery wasn't just a personal sign, it was a social crime, a stain on the Republic itself. And when the betrayed was a pontifex, the punishment demanded cleansing. Lucius Aelius Severus, ever meticulous, had orchestrated the scene like a maestro of ruin. First came this. He recounted in a thin, reedy voice how Livia entered the temple of Minerva one dark night, followed soon after by Marcus. They were there for over an hour. He whispered and never prayed once. His words struck Gaius like nails into a coffin. But talk alone would not suffice until Lucius unveiled an object, a jade pendant carved with an eagle Gaius' wedding gift to Livia, now found in Marcus' quarters. A hush spread. Livia stood pale, hair loose, eyes wet but voiceless by law. She could not speak in court unless her husband allowed it. Gaius said nothing. Marcus, however, stood firm. "I love her," he declared. "If that is a crime, then all of Rome is guilty." The room trembled. Lucius smirked, cold as marble. "We do not judge love," he said. "We judge betrayal." The sentence came swift. Marcus was stripped of rank, his property seized, and banished from all Roman territorizer, slow death in exile. But Livia's fate was worse. As husband, Gaius had a sacred right, either hand her to the state for public execution or enact judgment himself in private. It was not mercy, it was Roman law. Lucius turned to Gaius, voice like silk over a blade. "What say you, Varro? Will you cleanse your house with your own hand?" The silence throbbed. Gaius rose, lips trembling. He gazed at Livia, who stood serene. "No pleas, no tears. I ... will cleanse this sin myself," he said. "Not for the law, for honor." The room erupted in horror. Rome slept under a wan moon. Gaius' villa, once proud and glittering, now stood as a tomb. According to custom, an adulteress was to be executed at home, by a husband's hand. No crowd, no soldiers, only silence, only fate. The chamber was prepared like a sacred altar. In the center, a stone bed draped in white. Beside it, a ceremonial blade curved silver, bearing the mark of Mars, sent, no doubt, by Lucius himself. Gaius, clad in black, walked in flickering lamplight. Each step echoed like a death drum. No longer a priest, no longer a senator, only a man consumed by betrayal and bound by tradition. Livia entered in a plain white robe, hair unbound like threads of mourning. She did not weep. She did not resist. "Do you remember our first night?" she asked. "When you told me Rome needed women like me, pure, holy." He turned away. He remembered. "I'm sorry," she said. not for loving another, but for believing love could survive Rome. Gaius lifted the blade, his hands shaking. "I'm not afraid," she whispered. "Only I hope, after tonight, you stop living as a ghost." "No," he whispered back. "I will not live at all." The blade fell. One clean stroke. Blood spilled across white cloth like a painting by Caravaggio dark. Holy, irreversible. She collapsed, eyes wide, lips parted, silent. Gaius didn't scream, didn't sob. He merely stood over her, statue, watching his trembling hands drenched in the only woman who had ever seen him as more than a symbol. By dawn, he locked himself in the family temple. He neither ate nor slept. Servants reported him kneeling before Jupiter's statue for 3 days, unmoving, as though awaiting divine judgment. In the streets, whispers grew. Some hailed him a martyr for honor, others muttered, "If justice looks like that, then Rome is a graveyard wearing a toga." Lucius Arius received accolades for his impartiality, but he did not smile. One night, he burned a painted portrait of Livia, perhaps one he had once drawn in secret. After all, to love someone in Rome was a dangerous thing. Even dreaming could damn you. The sun had set on Rome's golden age, but the city's heart still beat with the rhythm of ancient laws. In the shadows of a once-proud villa, Lucius Cornelius Scipio wandered like a spectre, his footsteps echoing through empty halls. The man who had once commanded respect in the Forum was now a husk, hollowed out by the very laws he had sworn to uphold. Weeks turned to months, and Rome's relentless march continued. But for Lucius, time stood still. He no longer graced the Senate or attended sacred rites. Titus followed the sound to the family shrine, where he found Lucius, his hair now streaked with silver, plucking at an old But Rome honors nothing. It demands everything: blood, duty, silence. The tune was unfamiliar, not a triumphant march or a hymn to the gods, but a lament that seemed to rise from the depths of Tartarus itself. Only Titus, an aged freedman who had known Lucius since boyhood, remained. He would set out meals that went untouched, watching as grief consumed the man he had once admired. His world had shrunk to the confines of his estate, where memories of happier days haunted every corner. But anguish, it seems, requires no nourishment to thrive. But in the end, it was clear that the heart of the empire, like the heart of Lucius Cornelius Scipio, had been consumed by the very laws it had created to preserve itself. The household staff dwindled, unable to bear the weight of their master's sorrow. "He refuses sustenance," Titus would murmur to the empty halls. He lay before the eternal flame, clad in the white robes of a priest, the scroll of the Lex Julia unfurled across his lap. A dagger protruded from his chest, its hilt adorned with the family seal. His finger rested on a single line of text: "A husband may reclaim his honor through sacred act." On a night when thunder shook the heavens, a mournful melody drifted through the villa. "I believed that by honoring the law, I would be honored in turn." Lucius spoke, his gaze fixed on some distant point. Titus stood frozen, watching as Lucius turned. The fire that had once burned in his eyes was now extinguished, leaving only ash. "I sacrificed the only person who saw me as a man, not a monument to virtue. You upheld your duty," Titus whispered, his voice barely audible. Lucius shook his head. "No," he replied. "I bowed to fear." When the Ides of March arrived, they discovered Lucius' lifeless form in the Temple of Vesta. As Rome awakened to the news, whispers spread through the streets. Some spoke of tragedy, others of justice.